Which player is the biggest X factor for the 49ers on offense? Which player is the one that's going to make the biggest difference for the San Francisco 49ers in 2024? Going to go through some potential players, discuss who is the biggest X factor this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Talking about biggest X factor on offense. And of course, I did this on defense, and it was a fun conversation to look at the players, look at the team, and who could be the biggest X factor. And of course, with all things, it's your definition of X factor. And for some, it's different than maybe what I believe a X factor could be for your football team. So when you're talking about X factor, of course, the definition, there's a couple of different ways to approach it. Most look at it this way: a special talent or quality. And for 49ers, they have a lot of special talents on offense. Whether you're talking about the offensive player of the year in Christian McCaffrey, you're talking about an MVP candidate in Brock Purdy, the one who is the biggest playmaker, in my opinion, in the NFL, in Deebo Samuel. I mean, he's the biggest playmaker on the 49ers team and one of the best in the whole entire NFL. He has whole shot ability, and I know I might have misstepped and said he was the biggest playmaker in the NFL. Pretty close. I mean, I think Tyreek Hill and some of those guys are really up there, but when Deebo gets the ball in his hands, he can make plays. Is an X factor Trent Williams? We know what he can do. Or George Kittle, the fact that he's able to run block and play tight end and catch the ball for over 1,000 yards. Could he be the extreme X factor for the 49ers? Is it someone like Kyle Juszczyk, or is it the darn offensive line for the San Francisco 49ers? Well, I think if you're looking at special player, they have so many. But what about the other definition of it? A variable, a different player that could have the most significant impact on the outcome. That's when you start talking about players like Jawan Jennings, who could have been the Super Bowl MVP. He potentially could be an X factor for this 49ers team. Could it be a new addition like Logan Thomas? Maybe Logan Thomas's ability to come in and help at the tight end position could make him an X factor and influence the way the 49ers have offense. We're going to go through it. We're going to talk about these guys, the positions, and the offense is a little bit different than defense. The defensive conversation went one way. Offense is going to be entirely different because I think in this area, the 49ers offensive players, the big-time stars, are probably more inclined to be X factors because of the significance that they have. And just think about this. I haven't talked about one particular player that the whole entire offseason has been talking about. Is that guy an X factor? We'll talk about all of that and a little bit more after I tell you this. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right up to all the top fights in the UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. And there are some usual suspects when it comes to being an X factor for the San Francisco 49ers. Throughout most of the early 2020s, the X factor often was pointed in the direction of Deebo Samuel. And once 2022 happened, a lot of people started pointing that X factor directly at Christian McCaffrey. two similar players who can definitely change a game with the way they go about business. One from the running back position who can also catch, the other from a wide receiver position who can also run. Those guys have been put in the realm of really good X factor players, and they do make a difference for your team. And then there's a guy that just came on the scene over the last couple of years in Brock Purdy. And of course, the 49ers quarterback situation was a little up and down. When Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy, he didn't do that bad. When Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt, he really struggled. And ultimately, he hurt 49ers in a bunch of crucial games, whether he was available or not, because of injury. And so the 49ers knew that they needed to get a quarterback that could potentially be an X factor. And that's why they traded all that draft capital for Trey Lance. Of course, that didn't work out. Little did they know in 2022, in the 7th round, that Mr. Irrelevant pick was going to end up being a player that could be an X factor for this football team. And why do I say that when it comes to Brock Purdy potentially being an X factor for this team? Well, number one, he touches the ball on every single play. There's two players that touch the ball on every single play. Your center, Jake Brendel, and your quarterback, Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy also has to make decisions before the ball is ever even snapped. He has to look at the defense. He has to be able to determine which play they should run. The 49ers run a can system, which means there's two plays the 49ers can run when they come to the line of scrimmage. If they like the original play call, they will just run the play. If something the defense is doing would take away the effectiveness of that play, they can the play and go to play two. Often this is a difference between run and pass, and you'll go from a pass play to a run play. Of course, you can also flip the run play from side to side with a certain call as well. There's a lot of things the quarterback has to do pre-snap that are just as important to the success of the offense as he does post-snap. So there's a lot that gets put on your quarterback, and having a quarterback that has a firm understanding of what the offense needs to look like and how exactly to get the 49ers in the right place is significant, because there are certain things that a quarterback's coming up to the line and looking. Now, some of the more easy examples are as simple as you see a single high safety. It probably means they have 8 guys in the box. It means 8 defenders from tight end to tackle that are in the box within around 5 yards of the line of scrimmage that are going to come in and try to stop the run. Well, if you had a run play called, not always the best time to run the ball. It's a better pass opportunity. So you might check to your pass play. So if you had an original run play called, you can it and you run your pass play. That's Brock Purdy's job. Now, let's flip it to the other side. There's 2 deep safeties on the play, and you were supposed to run a pass play, and that pass play was going to be well defended by the coverage that the shell is showing from the defense. Then maybe you want to can that play and go to the run play. So there's a lot of different things you can do. On a 3rd and 1, maybe you just want to flip the run play to the other side. Those are all areas Brock Purdy has to be well read into, understand what he's looking at, and then go out there and execute it at a high level. That's a lot to put on a quarterback, especially a young guy. But Brock Purdy handles it so well. Now, as of right now, Brock Purdy hasn't been handling protection calls. Yeah, that's right. Quarterbacks will also handle what the offensive line does. If they slide protect to the right or to the left, or what they're going to do as far as checks, because you have to make sure that everyone is on page and on the same page and can pick up free blockers. So right now, Jake Brendel handles that. But most quarterbacks in the NFL handle protection schemes as well, and maybe he will at some point. Maybe he'll be able to recognize blitzers and be able to move the blocking scheme. So 49ers know that Brock Purdy can be an X factor pre-snap, and he can also be an X factor post-snap, because he has been a guy that's been so successful with his accuracy, getting the ball on target to his receiver in stride so they can make plays. Kyle Shanahan built this offense on the fact that they're going to have guys that are going to be yak monsters, right? You just look at the 49ers wide receivers, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, all guys with yak ability. We've seen them do it in the NFL, but don't stop there. Look at the new rookies the 49ers just brought in. Ricky Pearsall, yak guy. Jacob Cowling, yak guy. Look at the guys they brought over the last couple years. Danny Gray, yak guy. Those are things these guys do. This is the element of the 49ers game that makes them special. And you have to have a quarterback that can deliver the ball in play, in the right timing, in the right spot, so that your playmaker can make a play. You throw the ball behind him. We've seen that happen a lot with other quarterbacks. Then it slows them down. They don't have the same momentum to be able to get upfield and make some big plays for your football team. So it's so significant to have a quarterback that can get the ball out on time. It's also significant to have a quarterback that doesn't hold on to the football and take sacks. Brock Purdy doesn't get sacked very often. Now, he was pressured a lot. The offensive line didn't make it easy on him. 38% of the snaps that Brock Purdy dropped back on, he was getting pressure because of that offensive line. Those are plays he should have been sacked on, but he figured out how to get away or how to get rid of the football. So there's elements to that game that makes him a X factor as well, because the offensive line has been a definite conversation and a debate point. Is how good is the offensive line, and are they good enough to win football games and win a Super Bowl? Well, Brock Purdy has somewhat handled that situation with flying colors because he wasn't sacked very often. He did get rid of the football. He was able to make plays. He was able to get outside the pocket and create. One of the conversations about Brock Purdy was, hey, Brock is not a guy that can create with his legs. He's basically a system quarterback. Well, guess what? The system has failed Brock Purdy several times. It's the offensive line couldn't get it done. He gets out of the pocket. He creates. He's able to make things happen on the fly, and he does a really good job. That's an X factor caliber type play from Brock Purdy. So pre-snap, post-snap with his arm, and post-snap with his legs. That also his ability to recognize, decipher information, and go ahead and get the ball out when you're supposed to in the right avenue has been something Brock Purdy has handled. And we've seen this offense just get better and better and better since Brock Purdy took over in 2022. Once 2022 happened, he got in there with the Miami Dolphins. The 49ers started scoring the ball almost 30 points a game. Now, last year, it was a little bit more up and down, but the 49ers were scoring 30 early on in the season and then finished off pretty strong later on in the year. When Brock Purdy has all of his weapons, they hit at a high level. So Brock Purdy could easily be thought as the biggest X factor for the 49ers. But I want to look at some other players too before we decide on who's going to be the X factor, the biggest X factor for the 49ers. Let's look at Christian McCaffrey, because when Christian McCaffrey came to the 49ers in 2022, he changed the game for this football team. He gets in the end zone consistently. But what he is a different dynamic than any other player in this league, because he not only can run the football really, really well, and it's not that he can't run inside or out. He could do both, inside, outside zone. He can run gap scheme. You get him the ball in a toss, he's going to be able to get something done there. You throw him a screen pass, he's dynamic in the open field. You go ahead and line him up at slot, he's going to win in that situation, whether it's a linebacker, safety, or a nickel corner. Christian McCaffrey adds an extra element to this offense that is unique. And a lot of times that puts the X Factor logo right on you. And X marks the spot if you are a matchup issue. And Christian McCaffrey is a matchup issue. Every single week during the season, we were looking for matchups the 49ers could win against the opposing team. And usually you just find number 23, you find their linebackers, and you look for an opportunity that he's going to be able to get open in the passing game. You find Christian McCaffrey and you find a weak front seven, and you say to yourself, McCaffrey's going to have a big, long run, explosive play against this team that's going to change the game. And we've seen it happen. Touchdown run against the Green Bay Packers that absolutely changed the momentum of that game. Big time run touchdowns inside the red zone in the playoffs where he bounces off guys and runs into the end zone. Game-changing plays. Christian McCaffrey's a game changer. Christian McCaffrey is an X factor. Is he the biggest X factor? Well, he can do so many things in Kyle Shanahan's system. He makes Brock Purdy's job significantly easier. Number one, Brock Purdy could just turn and hand off. Christian McCaffrey does his thing in the running game. Now, of course, there's a lot of elements that go along with it. Running back has to get a good hole from the offensive line, which the offensive line actually did a very good job when it came to the run game in 2023. But also the offensive line has to help him when it comes to passing game, when he's going to go out for a pass. So Christian McCaffrey can't do it by himself. Brock Purdy can't do it by himself. We know this is a team game, but there is an element of an X factor for Christian McCaffrey within this offense. In 2021, it was Deebo Samuel that had to become a wide back to further this offense's potential. And now the 49ers don't need Deebo to be a wide back as much because they have Christian McCaffrey. Now, when they signed Deebo to that new contract between the 2021 and 2022 season, I don't think they ever thought they were actually going to get their hands on Christian McCaffrey. There's lots of rumors out there. Maybe McCaffrey would be available, but your likelihood of actually picking up that player, you never want to count on that. So Deebo was coming back for that wide back role. But since 2021, Deebo hasn't been as significant in the backfield. His carries haven't been as dynamic. He's been more dynamic when it comes to reverses and screens and things like that, more of what he did in the 2019 through the 2020 season. So Christian McCaffrey being that running back that could catch out of the backfield and take over a little bit of the role that Deebo Samuel had to fulfill in 2021 has been huge, especially because Elijah Mitchell hasn't been healthy over the last couple seasons. And that was the 49ers' best running back since Raheem Mostert left. So 49ers definitely have a X factor with Christian McCaffrey. Is he the biggest X factor? Is it him, Brock Purdy? Well, I don't know. And there's still more guys to talk about because Deebo Samuel, who I just mentioned, is the biggest game changer on the entire 49ers team. When the ball is in his hands, every single time it gets into his hands, there's an opportunity for him to go all the way to the end zone. He can house call any play at any time for any good reason. It doesn't even have to look like it's open. It can look like there's 11 bodies around him. Everyone remembers the 2021 season where it looked like he was going to be tackled in the backfield and he literally went under someone and got out from under it. You know, you see him in the Philadelphia Eagles game catch a screen and take it to the house without being touched. Catches the ball over the middle, breaks a tackle, house call. There's just a different element and dynamic to Deebo Samuel's game than almost anyone else on the football team. Now, I think George Kittle has some of the characteristics as well, but not quite to the level that Deebo does. He's a game changer. That's an X factor of his own right. Because now, as a defense, I need to know where that guy is at all times. If I don't know where he is, that's not a smart move. I am not a smart defensive coordinator. I look at sometimes the play last year the 49ers ran when they put him in motion and he acted like he was jogging and the defense forgot him and they threw it to him for a touchdown. Like, how do you let that guy go uncovered? Whenever you see that kind of stuff happen, the attention to detail is missing. Now, I've already talked about, 3 players that could be X factors. That makes it a little bit more difficult. But Deebo just has that added element, the game changer element that is different. Also, he can run the ball in the backfield. He can run the ball on fly sweeps. He can catch screens. Ask Jamal Adams if he can beat you deep. He can. Ask other players on the New York Giants if he can catch the ball in back shoulder. He can. This is just something that Deebo's been working on, the added element. And all you have to do is look at the numbers. When Deebo Samuel didn't play in a 3-game stretch, and I know Trent Williams was out as well, but when they were playing Cleveland, Minnesota, and Cincinnati, the 49ers averaged 17 points per game in his absence. The 49ers are not the same offense when Deebo Samuel's not on the field. And why is that? Well, Deebo adds elements to the game. He keeps the defense occupied. Even if he's not getting the football, still paying attention to him because he could change the game in a heartbeat. Get him the football in space, over. So he makes it easier for everyone else to be able to play their game. So that's why he has that X factor qualities. Deebo Samuel is a special player. Now let's talk about somebody that is up for a contract. Brandon Ayuk. Is Brandon Ayuk an X factor? Well, he plays the X position, and according to him, he can play the X position in any single offense around the league. And I tend to agree because he's a really good route runner. He does a lot of things to create separation. He can win one-on-one, which you have to be able to do. Press releases, being able to get physical, get in and out of breaks. Brandon Ayuk can handle that. Is he a elite top 5 wide receiver? I think that's a conversation for another day. But is he a guy that can get it done? Yeah, he can. And he adds an element to the 49ers offense that they really need. And I've said this for a while. When I hear people talk about, oh, let's keep Ayuk and get rid of Debo, it's not like these guys, though they play wide receiver, play the same position. Brandon Ayuk plays X, which is a legit wide receiver position. Debo is just a superstar player. Sometimes he's a receiver. Sometimes he's a running back. Sometimes he's a whatever you need him to be. And so it's not one or the other when you're talking about these two guys. It's the complement of, right? It's the complement of the two guys that make this duo dynamic. Well, Brandon Ayuk makes it easier for other people because he can win one-on-one matchups. You want to go, if you could not be able to win one-on-one, then they could help on Debo, or they could help on McCaffrey, or they could put an extra body on George Kittle. But Brandon Ayuk can do that. He can go get you those big catches, and he had clutch catches, absolutely clutch catches in 2023. Over the middle against Green Bay, holds onto the football. In the back of the end zone against Philadelphia, holds onto the football. Those were huge. Bouncing off someone's helmet, catch the ball in the air against Detroit in the NFC Championship game. Those type plays are X factor type plays. The one element that's definitely different from him and Debo is Ayuk doesn't have as many whole shot touchdown plays. Occasionally he'll get behind everyone. He'll catch a ball for a 40-yard, 50-yard touchdown. That's a more occasional, where Debo does it all the time. George Kittle does it all the time. Those guys have a lot of big-time plays. And Brandon Ayuk has never had 10 touchdowns in a season. So those elements are a little bit different, but that's not what makes him an X factor, is the explosiveness of the plays, but the ability to get open and have key first down catches. The key, to be able to get open and put stress on a defense to have to bracket cover you and then allow some of the other guys to make plays. By him being a solid X receiver, that's how you get Debo Samuel lined up on Jamal Adams running through that zone for a big touchdown down the field against Seattle. So added elements of Brandon Ayuk's game make him potentially an X factor. I know this. I don't want to see the 49ers in 2024 without him. I want him a part of this football team because I think that the complement of McCaffrey to Debo to Brandon Ayuk to George Kittle is significant. And another X factor potentially to this team is Trent Williams. Trent Williams, when he's out there, is the best offensive tackle in the entire league. He keeps Brock Purdy safe from the backside. Plus, when he's out there, this offensive line is just tremendously better because he can handle people one-on-one. That means you can give help other places. Running backs can come help. Tight ends can stay in and help. And you don't lose a lot when it comes to pass protection because you know you got that guy. Without Trent Williams, this team is not the same. They're not as good running the football. They run to the left a lot right behind him, and who wouldn't run behind him and Aaron Banks? But number two, they're just not as good in pass protection. He's a Hall of Famer. He's the one that makes this thing roll. Plus, he's a great team leader. And George Kittle could be an X factor as well. What other tight end had 1,000 yards receiving last year? No one. Not even Travis Kelce. How many other tight ends block like George Kittle? Not very many. George Kittle is the best all-around tight end in the entire NFL. That alone can make him an X factor. He's an X factor in the running game, an extension of the offensive line who makes key blocks for Christian McCaffrey. But also, he's not just a safety net, but a guy that can be a playmaker the way Debo does. He has like points of each one of the players. He runs routes better than other tight ends, so he could be like Brandon Ayuk as a tight end as far as getting open against his certain matchups. He blocks that way, and that's something I didn't mention as much about Ayuk as I should have. His blocking is tremendous. Well, these guys have all the ability to be X factors for this 49ers offense. Now, I want to kind of go look at a couple of other things real quick. Number one, Logan Thomas in 12 personnel could be an X factor there. Now, I don't think it's going to be a big enough X factor for him to be the X factor on offense, the biggest. But I wanted to bring it up because I think that's going to be significant. And that's something I've been talking about here and there for a little while. Jawan Jennings, I mentioned him earlier because he was an X factor in the Super Bowl. And if you're going to put all that attention on McCaffrey and Debo, and you're going to put that attention on Ayuk, you're going to probably at some point not be talking about Jawan. And Jawan could be an X factor for a lot of games. But will he be the biggest X factor is the question. Or is the biggest X factor the 49ers offensive line because of the struggles that they've had? can the other guys make up for the offensive line's potential struggles? Are they a X factor in a negative way? If they play up to potential, are they good enough to absolutely get things done? I think it's a good question. I think this offensive line could be an X factor for this team if they can play up to the level that I think everyone's hoping they will be. Now, they upgraded the depth around the offensive line, and they're going to have some competition in training camp. And ultimately, if Trent Williams stays healthy and this other four guys are able to get some continuity together, maybe they will improve a little bit. But we need better play from all of them. And right now, the 49ers offensive line is ranked in the top 17 in the league. Now, I've said this before, they need to be in the top 15 at least. But what happens if the 49ers were able to get this offensive line in the top 10? That'd be enough of an X factor to be the biggest X factor for the 24 Niners. I think a lot of people would say yes. Success running the football breeds success for the offensive line because the offensive line is so much better when you have a good running game because it makes for third and short conversions instead of third and long. Third and long is not an offensive lineman in the NFL's friend because that means a defensive lineman gets to pin his ear back and come after you. So 49ers offensive line is pretty good at blocking in the run game. Success there breeds success when it comes to the passing game. So who overall is the 49ers' biggest X factor on offense? I'm going to say it's Brock Purdy. And I've went before and said it's Deebo Samuel. I would not be upset if you said it was Christian McCaffrey. I honestly don't think there's very many wrong answers when looking at this offense. But Brock Purdy is coming into a year where he's having a full offseason. Last year, he was in the MVP conversation. And this year, I think he could win MVP if he has the season that I believe he can have. But a third year within this offense means a full grasp and grip on what he's seeing. More freedom, getting the 49ers in the best plays. He has just so much control over this 49ers offense to put them in the best situations to be successful. He's also got the ability to change the game with his arm, with his legs, and with his processing power with his mind. Brock Purdy can definitely change this game in so many ways. And one of the ways he does that is being a distributor and getting the ball to an X factor like Christian McCaffrey, an X factor like Deebo Samuel, an X factor like Brandon Ayuk, like George Kittle. Brock Purdy's got the ability to do that. And I think he's going to look physically different. He's stronger. He's put on more muscle. He's going to have a different presence already. Every single year he gets more confident. He gets more comfortable within this offense. And the more comfort he gets, the more relationship he gets with Kyle Shanahan. He starts seeing the game the way Kyle sees it. Ultimately, that's the goal of an offensive coordinator compared to the quarterback. These guys want to see the game the same way. So the coach is always trying to get the quarterback to see it through his lens, because if he does, he'll understand what Kyle's doing and the things he's trying to set up and what's going to be open depending on the coverage that you're going to be looking at. And then as that happens, you build trust, and then Kyle Shanahan starts to trust the things that Brock Purdy's seeing on the field. And I do think they have a lot of trust, but it just continues to grow with good football play. And if Brock Purdy has another year like he had last year, or like I believe he can actually have a little bit better year, this offense might carry the 49ers through some tough games. In the early part of the season where you're going to have question marks about Drake Greenlaw, you're going to have question marks about Tauno Ufonga, the offense could lead the way. The offense could go out there and blow teams out. And it's on the 49ers to play from ahead. This is one of the best rosters in the NFL, if not the best roster. The quarterback is pulling the trigger on it. Like I said, he touches the ball every single snap. But I think because Brock Purdy's ability in pre-snap, post-snap, and creating when all hell breaks loose to make plays is the reason I think he's the biggest X factor on offense for the San Francisco 49ers in 2024. But I want to know who your X factors are. Leave them in the comment section down below. Let me know if it's one of the guys I mentioned. Maybe I missed somebody. Do you think it's the offensive line for obvious reasons because of the struggles that they've had? I'm really curious what you have to say about it because I don't think there's a wrong answer, but perspective definitely leads to fun conversation because we've seen Deebo Samuel, correct? Miss 3 games and the offense struggle at 17, and my X factor, Brock Purdy, played in those games. And of course, he had concussions and whatever, but circumstances don't determine always the effect on the game. So I think it's interesting. It's a fun conversation. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Listening audio platform 40 Yards Cutback on Believe. Please give it a 5-star rating. And of course, this episode brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.